So what I wanted to do today is take a little time and go through the book of Exodus from a bird's eye view and show us what our founding fathers used to establish the United States. And they primarily used a lot of the Old Testament for the basis of our government, but they used primarily Exodus. The ideas of freedom were already there, but the concept of freedom that we believe in the United States comes from the Bible, comes from the foundation of the Bible. And so I'm going to be taking you through Exodus today. We're going to stop in our series because I think it's important for us to understand what is the definition of freedom and what do you have to do to maintain it, because I'm very concerned about what I am seeing in our culture. I am very concerned about what I'm seeing in Western society. And I'm going to show you through this the attacks of the Trojan horse that are in the America and the West to destroy it. And if we don't understand this, and we don't communicate this to the next generation, we will lose the freedoms that our founding fathers and our military got for us. So I'm going to take you through that today because 4th of July is this week, and it's important to understand all of this. 4th of July, obviously, is not just simply your barbecue and fireworks. It's about what happened and how we got our freedom, the freedom that we enjoy today. Most Christians today do not experience the freedom we have to be able to come here to a church unimpeded and have free speech and be able to say what we want to do. Even in Europe, they cannot say the things we say. They are losing their freedoms. And wanted to talk about that. So what we have in Exodus is really the blueprint from liberation from tyranny. And as you know, the book of Exodus starts out with Israel in slavery to tyranny. And that's the concept. It's freedom from tyranny. And you know the whole story of how Egypt and the Pharaoh had enslaved the Jewish people. Well, one of the things you have to understand about tyranny, that tyranny is not uncommon. It is the default of human beings. It is the default of megalomaniacs, psychopathic. And for instance, if you look at the Ayatollahs in Iran, that's the default of people, is they default into power, they default into authoritarianism, and that's how the satanic world is aligned in this. But here's the other side of the coin. Tyranny also thrives and is allowed when the population and that culture or the society gives consent to it. And so it's not an accident that Nazi Germany happened. It's not an accident that Hitler became the ruler of Germany and imposed tyranny. It was already happening by consent by the people. There was the people who elected Hitler. And furthermore, any other tyranny, it typically will come, and the tyrant will come out of the wellspring of the people that give consent to it. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I think this is somebody everyone needs to be aware of, and you need to read the Gulag Archipelago. It's very important to understand about how do people lose freedom. He said this in the Soviet Union, and he was in the Gulag. He said, everyone lies about everything all the time. That's what allowed it. He says, this is the famous quote from him. We know they are lying. They know they are lying. They know that we know they are lying. We know that they know we know they are lying. And still, they continue to lie. Sounds like our media, doesn't it? And still, they continue to lie. But the problem is we continue to give the media consent. We continue to give education consent. We continue to give our kids over to the colleges and universities. We're giving consent to it. That's how tyranny starts. So Solzhenitsyn said this: to understand the Soviet Union and what happened there in that system of tyranny, he said what happened is universal dishonesty among people. And that's important because Solzhenitsyn and anyone that has studied where tyranny has developed understands that the populace becomes a willing participant in it. Now, don't get me wrong, there are those who detract from that and don't go along with the system. But what we see from any tyranny is that initially it starts with the majority of the people giving consent. For instance, in in Egypt, the Egyptians gave consent to what Pharaoh's edict had put on the Israelites. For instance, collective enslavement. They were all for enslaving the Jewish people. They all participated in infanticide when Egypt gave the edict that the firstborn of the males of Israel should be killed, thrown into the Nile. The culture gave consent to that. The Egyptians benefited from the oppression of the Jewish people. They prospered, and that's why when they left, God made them give up their property to the Jewish people as a token of what they had taken from them. And so the Egyptians were complicit in this. And then God's judgment, as you see, didn't simply fall on Pharaoh, it fell on all the Egyptians, all of them, because there was a collective guilt. Now, this is important to understand about collective guilt when we're talking about tyranny. Collective guilt is found in the scriptures. You can see it in Joshua and Samuel, Lamentations, Daniel, and even Matthew in the first century with Israel. It wasn't all the people of Israel that rejected the Messiah. It was the religious leaders. But there was a minority that believed in Jesus. But as a collective guilt, that's why the unpardonable sin was put on Israel and 70 AD happened, because it was a collective guilt. So even though you have tyrannical leaders and the majority go with it and a minority don't, it still brings God's judgment. Now, think about the collective guilt, not that you and I are doing anything, the collective guilt for America for abortion, the collective guilt of America for promoting LGBT and transgender. Think about the collective guilt. And you're saying, well, I don't do it. I know you don't. And God will spare you. There's no doubt about that. He knows how to separate the wheat and the chaff. No doubt about that. Even in the days of Joshua, he even let the hail come down and hit the enemies and not the Jewish people. So he knows how to separate everyone out. But the problem is, when a culture goes with the lie that men can have a baby, that homosexuality and lesbianism is okay, or wokeism is okay, or killing babies in the womb is okay, you are bringing collective guilt to the society. And then the rise of a tyrant will happen. Look what's happening to New York. How does that guy even get elected? Okay? How does someone like that, a 33-year-old communist Islamicist, get elected in a primary in New York? Who is voting for that? What kind of people vote for Ilhan Omar? What kind of people vote for Rashida Tlaib? What kind of people vote for Chuck Schumer? What kind of people vote for these creeps? Who votes for that? The problem is it's a part of a collective guilt that's going on in America. They want them. They want Jasmine Crockett. They want AOC. That becomes the problem. Hitler, when you watch Hitler, and there's been plenty of people who studied Hitler, Hitler had a personal resentment, no doubt about that. He dealt with rejection in his whole life. And that resentment is what caused the bitterness in Germany. And the German people were resentful from the Versailles Treaty to all kinds of economic problems they were having from World War I. They had a bitterness and a resentment. And Hitler took that resentment personally and fed the resentment to the German people, to where when he spoke, he paid attention to what they responded to. If the crowd roared for this, he kept saying that and he would add it. If the crowd roared for that, he would take that and add it. And before that long, he had all of what the crowd was saying in his speeches, to when he spoke, everybody connected to what he was saying. He fed the deep resentment, and they looked for a scapegoat to blame. And guess who they blamed? The Jewish people. That's exactly what collective guilt is doing today, blaming the Jewish people. The lies Hitler believed were the lies the German people believed. They obsessed with order and disgust with the same things that German people had. They needed a scapegoat for their own flaws. It was their problem, their flaws, but they would rather blame someone else. That's really the basis of a lot of times of anti-Semitism, is people want to blame the Jews for their failures. Not the Jews' failures, their own personal failures. It's called projection. It's a psychological thing. So whether it's Germany or France or Muslim countries, whatever, they want to blame the Jews for their own failures. So here's a theological principle in all of this. A society corporately endorses and participates in the benefits from systemic evil at the time. That's how to understand the framework of collective guilt. So God doesn't just hold the leaders responsible, he holds the people responsible. And so, for instance, Khomeini, he's obviously a tyrant. He is obviously a psychopath. And to show you how out of reality he is, he says to the Iranian people, they have won the war. And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the collective mentality of, well, we won. Obviously, this was a false claim. Trump said his country was decimated. His three evil nuclear sites were obliterated. I knew exactly where he was sheltered and would not let Israel or the U.S. armed forces, by the far greatest and most powerful in the world, terminate his life. We knew where this guy is at. We could have killed him, but we didn't. I wish they would. He needs to die because he's committed crimes against humanity. This guy needs to have the death penalty put on him. But again, that's what I'm talking about, the level of being out of reality. And so here's people in Iran. Don't get me wrong. There's always a subgroup that doesn't believe the lie. There's Christians in Iran that don't believe the lie, and other Iranians that don't believe the lie. But look at the rest of society in Iran that supports the Ayatollah. Here's what they're doing in their public streets, splashing water on a Jewish insignia with their burqas and all this other stuff. So what is that? That's called collective guilt. They believe the Ayatollah, they believe Israel's a demon, they believe Israel's Satan. That's collective guilt. And here's the thing, whether they know it or not, if you look at the Iranian Revolution that happened in 1979, a lot of Iranians were fooled by the Ayatollah. But they went along with it. They supported it. They got rid of the Shah. And they went along with it. So there is a collective guilt involved there. Not everyone was guilty, but how did that happen? And then you look at this, and the left-wing media has collective guilt, even not only in our country, but even in Israel. Here's Haaretz, an Israel publication, far left, saying that Israel is creating a killing field, and said that the IDF soldiers were ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. Now, that is a straight-up lie. That is a flat-out lie. The IDF does not do that. But yet, here's an Israeli newspaper flat-out lying about that. And you're like, what is that about? Well, it's the same thing with our media. They just flat-out lie. But when you lie, you create a condition for tyranny. That's the problem. And so what's the lie that's going on about our American culture and the West? We're celebrating this for 4th of July. It's this, that they must destroy Western civilization. And the tyrannists that we're dealing with are communists, Marxists, socialists, fascists, globalists, wokeists, and Islamicists. They all seek to end the West and establish a tyranny. That's what's going on right now. And if we're going to be complacent to let this happen, we will lose our freedom. Here's an example of the other side and what they tried to do to destroy our country. We know about Joe Biden opening our borders and letting 10 to 12 million people, illegal aliens, come through. And now we're finding sleeper cells from Iran in here. And here's a report: over 700 Iranian nationals released into U.S. during Biden's administration, despite terrorism concerns. That bothers me. That bothers me a lot, that we have terrorist cells and people from Iran that we don't know what they will do. That's crazy. And then again, like I said about this creep in New York that got elected in the primary, Zohran Mamdi, he's a communist Jew and Western-hating Muslim. He's pro-Hamas, anti-American, anti-Semitic, defund the police, release all the criminals from prison, don't prosecute crime, disarm law-abiding citizens, allow drug use, non-cooperation with ICE. And then he said, globalize the intifada. Do you know what that means? That is a Muslim trope of uprising the West and taking over and creating a caliphate. That's what they say in Israel. Israel had 2 intifadas against them by the Palestinians. But here's my question. What is going on with New York? I don't know. What's going on in LA? What's going on in San Francisco? What's going on in Detroit? What's going on in Chicago? What's going on in Atlanta? What's going on in Dallas? What's going on in all the big cities? You're starting to see a collective guilt. Somebody's putting these creeps in power. If you're not careful, he might win the election come November or whatever, and you will have a full-fledged communist Islamicist running New York. Babylon Bee had an interesting thing. Hamas claims responsibility for New York mayoral primary. Yeah, you're right. But how do these people get voted in? Who's voting them in? Listen to her, Ilhan.
These people are just idiots. I really, I'm at the point where it's become really hard to have an intellectual debate with any of these people because the level of stupidity that they are displaying every single day is frankly embarrassing, not just in Congress, but as Americans. And the fact that these people are allowed to say just the most ridiculous things tells you that the dumbing of the United States has arrived, because how else do we get a Trump presidency again?
Yeah. You know, she doesn't like what people say. It's called free speech. And the problem is she comes from a country, she comes from an ideology, Islam, that doesn't believe in free speech. They have blasphemy laws. She said in one of her speeches to the people that voted for her, I'm a Somali girl taken from my country. I miss my country and I dream of living in Somalia again. You know what I want to say? Go back. Get out of here. I don't know why you live here and hate our country and hate Western values. Muslim mindsets do not belong in America. They are contrary to our Constitution because they want Sharia law. Sorry, it doesn't work here. The problem with Islam is it's not just a religion, it's a political aspect to it. Massive terrorist sleeper cells discovered in Massachusetts. Yeah, right at Harvard. That's been the problem that Trump's been having with these colleges and universities harboring these types of people. And then where's the church at? There's collective guilt in the church. I know you and I don't do this, but where are the churches? I was just talking to somebody before service, and we're talking about voting and things of that nature. Yeah, the silence of the church is definitely because you know why? Pastors dress up like RoboCop to protest ICE. That's what they're doing. They're on the other side of the argument. If we have churches like this, we're going to lose our freedoms. Can individuals and groups escape from collective guilt? Absolutely. Rahab, Lot and his family, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the remnant of Israel during the time of the Messiah in the first century, the remnant of the church, the remnant of Israel during Jacob's trouble, of course, and including the 144,000. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, there can be collective guilt, but there can also be groups that escape it. Matthias Desmet says it like this: 30% will believe the lie, 65% don't believe the lie but go along with it to avoid hardship, to keep their money, security, and comfort. That's the majority of people. And 5% refuse to believe the lie. I hope that everybody in this room is the 5%, okay? Because if you're part of the 65%, like the majority of the church is, they know it's a lie and they're going along with it because they don't want to give up their creature comforts. They don't want to give up their security. They don't want to give up what they got going, their money, their whatever, their job. They don't want to lose their job. We just watched this during the COVID shutdowns of 65% of the population going along with it. So now let's see what he does. So that's a picture of tyranny. That's the default of culture. But watch what the Lord does to show us what liberty looks like. So the Lord desires to bless us with freedom if we want it. okay? And the Lord said, I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sorrows. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up to the land, from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. So the idea is God initiates freedom. Freedom comes from God. It doesn't come from man. God is the originator of freedom, okay? And so we have to recognize his call to that. He calls us out of slavery. You understand, when we were born a slave. We were born a slave to sin. We were born under the kingdom of darkness. We were born under the world system that's satanically controlled. And so what God does is reach down and pull us out of that. This is Romans 6:17. But God be thanked that though you were slaves of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that the form of doctrine to which you were delivered. So the idea is, look, you can get out of slavery. You have to make a choice. You have to choose that I want liberty, and I will take it at whatever cost it costs me. But again, God offers it, but people have to choose it, not only personally, but collectively as a society. So here's the key then. You're part of the 5% that understands that they're lying. Well, to stop the lie, to stop the tyranny, we have to have people who rise to oppose it. So that's what the calling of Moses represents. Come now, therefore, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt, to the king of Egypt. And you shall say to him, the Lord God of the Hebrews has met with us, and now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Notice that why? Freedom for what? I'm taking you out of bondage to do what? Go do anything you want to do? No, what does it say? So they will sacrifice to the Lord our God. Notice the last phrase here. Then the Lord said to Moses, go into Pharaoh and tell him, thus says the Lord God of the Hebrews, let my people go. That's freedom. For what? That they may serve me. Did you see that? The same word in the Hebrew of serving is the same word that the Hebrew can use for slave. Oh, wait a second. This is a profound thought. This changes all of our understanding of freedom. It is not freedom to do anything you want to do. It is a freedom to be a slave to God instead of a slave to Satan, a slave to sin, and a slave to death. Oh, so it's not I get to dye my hair blue and be a homosexual and be a transgender and live in complete anarchy. No, it's not that. Freedom is for you to serve God properly. Well, I've never been taught that. That's right, the public schools are not going to teach you that. But that's where our founding fathers got it. They understood this. Again, going back to Solzhenitsyn, who lived in on the Gulag, he said, here's how you stop tyranny. It starts with one person refusing to lie, and that one person can break the system. He said the first act of resistance against tyranny is to tell the truth. And you think, well, that's so easy. It's not so easy. Notice what society does. They know it's a lie, but they go with it. And the warning is, if people don't start telling the truth about reality, that a man cannot have a baby, there are not 52 genders, and you have to be willing to say that, and them tell you you're homophobic, you're transphobic, or if you tell the truth that Islam is a threat to America, oh, you're Islamophobic. So what? Whatever you want. Say I'm mentally ill. I'm going to tell the truth. If you will tell the truth, it stops tyranny. Look at this. Here's examples of people pushing back. RFK acts as all funding for Bill Gates' Global Vaccine Alliance. Good for RFK. That's someone telling the truth. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth took decisive action to strip Harvey Milk's name from the U.S. Navy ship. Excellent. I cannot believe they put Harvey Milk's name on a U.S. vessel. That guy was a pedophiler. And the LGBT community wants to wipe that out, like he didn't go after underage boys. Good for Pete. That's someone pushing back, that we need more of that. J.K. Rowling pushed back against the trans ideology. She's been fighting with them for a long time. But anyway, she responded to them. These trolls said that she looks like a trans man, a trans woman. So she brilliantly responded back saying, "Attention all men telling me I look like a trans woman. I'm sensing that this isn't meant as a compliment. In fact, the implication seems to be that trans women look male or odd or ugly. This is appallingly transphobic, and I think you to take your bigotry off my timeline." So he was kind of sarcastic, but they were saying that she looks like a trans man, and she says, "Oh, so you're saying I'm ugly, but you're right, all trans people look ugly." So for instance, trans people think they look like the person on the left, but they actually look on the person on the right. Can you identify the man in the picture? If you can't, you can need your glasses on or something. But again, you see what I'm saying? It's that obvious. And people are like, "Yeah, that's a woman. No, that's a woman. She says she's a woman." No, I don't believe your lying eyes. If you do that, you're going towards tyranny. Now listen to this. I love this. This is a pro-Israel guy. I think it was from, where was he from? Hungary or something. I can't remember. But listen to his speech about Israel. I love it. He's pushing back.
I want to thank Israel. Let us thank Israel for what they are doing. Because we are here only talking, and we are talking, and we are talking again. We are making resolutions. But can you stop Iran from having nuclear weapons with 1,000 resolutions? Maybe with 1 million resolutions. Can we stop Iran from having nuclear weapons? Oh, let us imagine if this mullahs regime, which killed so many Iranians, yes, they're killing Iranians every day, this awful regime. So what do we want? To have them nuclear weapons? Maybe to attack by nuclear strike Strasbourg. Why not? Imagine that Mr. Khomeini will see now this assembly. I want to tell you, dear ladies, he will not like the way you look like. He will not like the way we speak here. He will not like us at all. So maybe he will just send a nuclear missile on us. Why not? So Israel is protecting the basic values we all here have. We're speaking here about women's rights. Who is protecting women's rights in the Middle East? Israel. We're speaking about democracy. What is democracy in the Middle East? Israel. We're speaking about human rights. We're speaking about rule of law. Israel, Israel, Israel. So instead of criticize Israel, instead of attacking Israel, we need to support Israel. If we can't do nothing, at least let us not intervene and let us not attack Israel when Israel is doing its job, protecting Israel itself, definitely, but also all of us. All of us. I'm Israel High. Thank you to Israel for what they're doing. Let's support them, not making any steps to stop them, because what they're doing is important for everybody of us. Thank you.
I like that guy. I like that guy. That's what I'm talking about, man. But yet we have pastors that won't say a word about Israel. We have pastors that won't say a word about LGBT, transgender. Here's another example, Stephen Furtick. Not once has he ever preached or spoken out against abortion, homosexuality, transgenderism, or any other controversial moral issue that the Bible speaks clearly about. Furtick's silence on controversial social issues is not an oversight or a coincidence. It is a calculated strategy to maintain a large and financially lucrative congregation. That's what I told you. That people will sell out their freedom of speech for money or whatever. That's the church. But freedom, as you know, always comes with a cost. You and I know that, but a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand what price freedom comes at. Now, the price, if we go back to Egypt, what was the price to get the Israelites out of Egypt? The judgments of God. The judgments of God pounded the Egyptians and pounded Pharaoh with 10 plagues, as you know. And then they wouldn't even stop then. They were so psychopathic. Pharaoh took his army into the Red Sea to pursue Moses and didn't even pay attention to the supernatural phenomenon of the water splitting. They just went right into it. Didn't even see the miracle. They were so possessed in destroying the Jews. And what happened? The Red Sea swallowed them up and drowned them. That's how psychopathic. But that was the cost. We know the cost. We celebrate this or we memorize it, memorialize it on Memorial Day, and we celebrate our veterans on Veterans Day. And we understand that there was a price of freedom. There was a cost. In Egypt, you know that one of the aspects of this before they left was sacrifice. It was all there. Remember, they were to sacrifice a lamb without blemish and put the blood on the doorposts. You know that very well as the Passover, right? And we know that was a prefigure of what Messiah would do. When you look at the bloodstained door, it is exactly in the position of the cross. So sacrifice was required to get them out of Egypt. And the same thing is true. The picture of Israel leaving Egypt is a picture of us leaving the world system through the sacrifice of the Messiah. There had to be the sacrifice of Jesus for us to have freedom, not just political freedom, not just personal freedom, but spiritual freedom from sin and death. That's the idea. But here's the point. You and I who enjoy freedom, and we have to understand this, it has to be maintained. It has to be worked on. There has to be people responsible for maintaining it. And that's where you lose it. Because in order to keep your freedom, you must be in a continual sacrifice. Well, that's interesting because in our own sanctification, we are called to be a living sacrifice. We have the sacrifice of Christ for our salvation, no doubt about that. But then, as far as being conformed to his image, we must make daily sacrifices in order to maintain our fellowship with the Lord and stay in obedience to him. So it takes work, it takes obedience, it takes personal sacrifice to walk with the Lord. It's just not an automatic. Well, the same is true about any freedom. It's not automatic. If we let our hands go, we take our hands off the wheel, and we allow people just to not maintain this, you will lose it. And unfortunately, I'm not too confident in the younger generations if they understand this concept. You must continue to sacrifice for freedom. You have to. Frederick Douglass said this, without a struggle, there can be no progress. He's totally right. He was talking about the emancipation of the slaves. He understood the concept. If there's going to be freedom, there has to be a struggle continually to maintain it. Now let's go to the wilderness. They come out of Egypt into the wilderness to what? To wander in the desert? What happened over there? Well, the challenge then is once you're free, once you get a taste of what it's like to be free, to come to church unimpeded, to come to church and no one persecuted you to come today, for me to say what I'm saying without someone trying to curtail what I'm saying or put me in jail. The challenge of that is, will the person embrace freedom? So look at what happens once they're in the desert with Moses. Then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us up out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Look at this. Then the whole congregation of the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, oh, that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, and when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill us, this whole assembly, with hunger. Wow. Wow. Now, here's the thing. The mistake is to look at this and say, these ingrates, they are freed from slavery, and what do they want to do? They want to go back into slavery so their bellies are full, so they wouldn't be in the desert to die. Now, what God is trying to show all of us, this is not just indicative of the Exodus generation, it's indicative of humans. Most humans do not like having freedom. And I know that sounds bizarre. It's counterintuitive, but it's true. People often choose slavery over freedom. Why? Because it's easier to be cared for, it's easier to be irresponsible, so they trade those things for comfort, security, and dependency. Look, we have tons of people who are dependent on the government that do not want to be responsible for their lives. They do not want to live independent lives. They do not want to make their own way in this world. It's counter, and so we have welfare fraud, we have Medicaid fraud, we have all this stuff because people are on the government dole. Think about the younger generation. Do they want to really be responsible with their lives? Do they want to be responsible with the weight of decisions that they have to make? No, they would rather not. Unfortunately, we're not passing the baton of freedom off to the younger generation. So what does Scripture say to all of us? The Scriptures say, bear your own load. And we get this from Galatians 6:5, for each one shall bear his own load. What does that mean? Is that you are tasked by God every day to bear a certain responsibility for your life. You are not to be dependent on the government or anyone else for that matter to bear your load. You are required to bear your load. Everyone is. That is the essence of freedom. If you're going to be free, you have to be responsible. But as you can see with the Egyptians, they wanted to go back. They wanted to go back into slavery and lose their freedom. We saw that with the shutdowns. We thought people would rebel against the shutdowns, of having their businesses shut down, of having everything in their society shut down. But what did they respond to? They didn't respond saying, give us our freedom back. They wanted it to go longer. The teachers union wanted it to go longer. They don't respect freedom. They don't like freedom because you know why? They would have to work. They would rather sit there and veg out on Netflix all day long, every month, for an entire year and not work. And that's what these crazy pastors were doing. They took government money to sit on their rears to do nothing for an entire year and take a vacation on the government dime. That's what these pastors were doing. And don't ever forget it. You see a pastor or a church that shut down and stayed shut down for a year, don't attend that church. Don't ever give them your money. They are sellouts. They don't like freedom. That's their problem. Look what Benjamin Franklin said. They that can give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Dead right. They don't deserve it when they don't want it. Now let's talk about preventing a new Pharaoh. Because here's the thing, is the idea that God is going to take them from Egypt, from a tyranny situation to another tyranny under Moses? No, he gives limits to this. You shall select, this is Jethro talking to Moses, but this was sanctified by God. You shall select from all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth. Notice what it says, men of truth. What did I say prevents tyranny? Truth. And place over them, such over them to be rulers. So what is that? Well, it's where we got the concept in our government in the United States of balancing of powers, of accountability and checks and balances. That's where it all came from, is the Exodus. They saw what Jethro had said. And again, that was sanctified by God. It didn't come from God, but God sanctified because he allowed it and put his stamp of approval on it. And so in our concept of the three branches and checks and balances, that's where it came from, right here. And so when James Madison said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary, it's right. Because one of the fundamental things you have to understand about human beings is they're sinful. They have a bent in them towards sin, and therefore they cannot be trusted with power. Power will corrupt them. And so there has to be a balance in the power. And so that's what we created. Now, we've seen this balancing of power, thank God, in a few recent things this week. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled 6-3 on Friday. I don't understand the 3, but anyway, in a controversial birthright citizenship case that lower courts cannot simply issue nationwide injunctions and that doing so is an abuse of judicial power. Well, what have we been watching? We've been watching one of the balances of power get out of control, the judicial system with activist judges trying to stop Trump on nationwide deportation of illegal aliens and birthright citizenship. Everyone understands this common sense. You can't just come to America, have an anchor baby, and all of a sudden you become a citizen. That's not how it works. And that shouldn't be like that. And as Trump tried to explain that, that was for slavery in the 1800s, for goodness sake. We're not in that condition anymore. So you just can't have someone from Iran come here, have a baby in our hospital, and all of a sudden they're all Americans. That's crazy. Who in the world thinks that's okay? Oh, that's right, the ones who want their votes. That's right, never mind. I understand that. But what President Trump did by winning this is a huge win of balancing the power of these crazy lower courts. He said he's going full steam ahead on birthright citizenship, eliminating that, sanctuary city funding, eliminating that, suspending refugee resettlement, and freezing unnecessary funding and ending taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries. Good. But that's what the judges were trying to do. So this balance of power put these other lower courts in their position. Supreme Court also came to the rescue, thank God. On Friday, sided with Maryland parents on various faiths who sued their school board over its refusal to allow K-5 children to opt out of LGBT curriculum. So Alito nukes the LGBT indoctrination campaign. Well, hey, that's great. That's a balancing of power. If there wasn't a balance of power, then 5-year-olds would be getting LGBT information. Right, so that's an example of what was there. Supreme Court, again, steps up, thank God. Green lights states to cut off Medicaid funding for Planned Parenthood and major win for pro-life advocates. Yeah, that's right. If you're going to have abortion, I don't want to pay for it through my tax money. I'm glad he's going to stop that. Good for Trump to do that. But again, thank God the Supreme Court balanced that out. That's really good. That's what we want. We don't want tyranny. So what's the point? Let's go to a personal level. That's how you balance the sin nature in government, but how do you balance the sin nature in us personally? Well, obviously, this principle applies as far as accountability is concerned. Accountability. You and I, in order to progress in our walk with the Lord and stay obedient to Him and abide in Him and walk in the light, have to have accountability. We have to have other people watching how we live. And it cannot be your spouse. Your spouse becomes an echo chamber to you. That's how people get off. It has to be people outside. If you're a man, other men. If you're a woman, other women that are more mature, sometimes hopefully, and speak into your life that can say to you, hey man, I am watching this and this doesn't look good. Or who can cheer you on, hey, you're doing great, keep going. But you have to have eyes on you. Why? Because you can't trust yourself. You can get into an echo chamber, you start hearing your same things, and before you know it, you're lying to yourself. So even in our personal lives, you have to have accountability. We all do. We all have to have eyes on us. Now here's the thing about this. If we're going to have this freedom, we're going to leave Egypt and go into the desert. It cannot be freedom to do anything you want. And therefore, God puts the moral structure on the freedom. Classic, Exodus 20. He gives them what? The 10 commandments. And then he gives them the 613 commandments altogether. Why? Because freedom needs a moral framework. It is not libertarian freedom to do anything you want. It is biblical freedom. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. Does America have another God? To many people, they do. They don't worship the God of the Bible. They worship the God of money. They worship the God of fame. They worship the God of sex and hedonism. That's what they worship. I mean, when people identify their identity with their sexuality, that's the God of sex. that I am a lesbian, I am a transgender, I am a gay man, or whatever they say, that is them identifying with immorality, identifying with their sex act. That's what it is. That is putting another God in front of God. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. Plenty of them. You shall not take the Lord's name, your God, in vain. What does that mean? To carry God's name and say, I'm a Christian, but continue to sin is taking God's name in vain. I'm a Christian, and yet I will abort babies. Sorry, you're taking the Lord's name in vain. Honor your father and mother. Is that going on? Not really. Very few do that. You shall not murder. I'm sorry, with 63 million babies dead? Sorry. You shall not commit adultery. That happens all the time. You shall not steal. Forget that. You shall not bear false witness. The most of the culture lies as easy as it is to breathe. You shall not covet. Sorry, that's the whole point of Marxism, communism, and socialism. They, at the heart of it, they envy what other people have, and they want to take it away from them. So all 10 commandments are being broken by society on a large scale. But here's the problem. If you don't keep the commandments, you won't keep freedom. You will go right into tyranny. Ask anybody that has went into sin. You become a slave to that sin. That's what happens when you leave the moral framework. Now, what was the temptation in the Garden of Eden? Well, the command was, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day you eat of it you shall surely die. What was the warning for? When you decide to take upon yourselves total autonomy, which means that you decide to make up your own rules of how you're going to live, instead of getting my rules, you will die. That's what eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents. It represents total autonomy to make up your rules. So what does the Nakash do? And the Nakash comes to Eve. You will not surely die. You're not going to die by being totally autonomous. For God knows that in the day you eat it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So Satan's temptation is this. You call your own shots. You're not going to die. You become a God unto yourself by calling your own shots. And when you do that, you will see reality for what it is. Huh. Yeah. Ask anybody who has went down that path, who wants to be the God of their life, to make their own decisions, discover their own morality, and see where they end. They usually end in the pit. They usually end in despair, and death usually follows. So let me give you an analogy to understand freedom. So if you and I are going to play any game, a game of chess, a game of checkers, basketball, football, baseball, hockey, whatever, soccer, whatever. If we're going to play a game, you have to abide by the rules of the game in order to have the freedom in the game to play it. If you decide, I'm going to go on the baseball field and do anything I want, instead of running to first base when I get a hit, I'm going to run to third base. Or I'm going to run to second base. Or whatever. Or I don't believe that 3 strikes you're out. It's 5 strikes, then you're out. I believe that you walk on 2 balls instead of 4 balls. If you try to play the game with other people who are playing by the rules and you make up your own rules, you lose the freedom to play the game. If dribbling a basketball, you double dribble and you're like, well, that's not a foul. Yeah, but in our world, it's a foul, but it's not mine. It's not mine. And if I do a jump shot from right by the rim, I'm going to count that as 5 points. That's a 5-pointer. Who can play with you? You lose the ability to play with anybody if you don't play by the rules. You understand, when someone decides, I'm going to make up my rules, and we have them in our society, what do we do with them? Because they're not playing by all the rules that we're playing by. If you say there's 52 genders, that's not how the biological rules go. What are we supposed to do with you when you don't play? Well, you can't play the game. And when you can't play the game, you lose freedom. That's what the idea of God putting morality on freedom does for us. It allows us to play the game properly. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Totally get that. So if we have Americans that say we do not want to live by Judeo-Christian values, we want to live by Islamic values, we want to live by woke values, we want to live by Hindu values, it won't work what we have. So what will take the place of the kind of government we have when people don't want to play by the rules? Tyranny. That's what you get. You get a mob of masses doing anything they want, and guess what has to happen? You have to have a strong man to come in there and get order, like Hitler or Stalin or Mao or whatever, Pol Pot, to get order from the masses. If we can't trust the masses with morality, that's what you'll get. Noah Webster said this: the moral principles and precepts contained in the scripture ought to form the basis of all our civil constitutions and laws. The religion which has introduced civil liberty is the religion of Christ and his apostles. This is genuine Christianity. And to this, we owe our freedom, our free constitutions of government. They knew it. They knew it. So here's what you're learning about freedom. If you're going to personally experience freedom, you have to maintain it. You have to sacrifice for it. You have to be willing to be responsible. But freedom requires an internal transformation inside of you. That's what the law of God is supposed to do. You're supposed to understand, okay, why does God doesn't allow stealing? What is at the heart of that? The heart is this: everyone deserves private property, and no one has the ability to take it away from you. And if they try to, that's called stealing. You have the right to life. That's it. Thou shalt not commit murder. That means that you have the right to life. But what is that supposed to do? It's supposed to transform you. How does it transform me? That when I see a human being, I have to see them made in the image of God, and I have to understand that I have to respect that. I can't make people subhumans like they do in the womb. Well, that's really not a life. That's a blob, so you can kill it at Planned Parenthood. No. So that's a transformation that must happen internally. You must understand, why should we not steal? Because it violates a basic principle of private property, those things like that. Anyway, Galatians 5 says, for you, brethren, have been called to liberty. Only do not use your liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For all the law is fulfilled in one word, even in this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So what Jesus was trying to say, and obviously Paul picked this up in Galatians, is look, the half of the law is built on how you treat other people. And if you're going to take an opportunity of this freedom to hurt other people, you're in violation of what the intent of the law is. The law is supposed to make you love God and love others and treat them fairly and treat them responsibly. But if you don't, you will violate the heart of the law. And they're misusing liberty. That's what he's trying to say. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the ultimate freedom. The ultimate freedom is Messiah's freedom. Now, we understand that we get political freedom, personal freedom, those types of things. But the basis of all freedom is the greatest exodus, which is spiritual freedom. That's what it is through Jesus. Notice what it says in Romans 8, 1-2. Jesus the Messiah has made me free from the law of sin and death. I'm free from that. I'm not in bondage to sin anymore. I'm not in bondage to death. It doesn't rule over me. Colossians 1, he has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. Well, and here's the question. How do I get this freedom? that only God provides, which is the basis of all. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. That's how. That's how. To free yourself from bondage, and any bondage, not only spiritual bondage, but this bondage of death, bondage to addictions, to anything. The truth sets you free. So when you struggle personally of getting free of a particular sin, getting free from an addiction, getting free from an attitude or whatever, it comes down to the basis that you're believing lies. If you believe the truth, it will set you free. I believe that. I believe what Jesus said. And therefore, if you do believe it, what does he say? If the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. You shall be free of the struggle if you believe the truth. And that's the key. In our sanctification, it is about, do you believe what he says about you? Do you believe about reality? Do you believe in what God says about you? The more you believe, the more it sets you free. Jesus says this furthermore, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. So that's the key then. In order to not only get this political freedom, I have to have spiritual freedom, and it's only found in the Messiah. And what would the Israelites do when they were called to look on the serpent on the pole? They were to trust that by doing so, by looking up and believing what Moses said about the serpent, and then serpents, they would have life and the serpents would stop biting them. That's the idea, but it's a concept of do this and live. And what Messiah is saying, look to me or believe in me and you will be set free. Why? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved and experience freedom. The Son wants to set you free. If you have come to faith in the Messiah, you've already been set free from sin and death. No doubt about that. But there's other aspects of our life that we need to be set free from in our sanctification. Struggles that we're dealing with and all of that. The only way is through Christ. It's not through effort. It's not through being lazy. What did I say about freedom? You have to work at it. You have to become a living sacrifice and you become set free. And the goal is this, that the more I get set free from my bondage, the more I become like Christ. And every day I become more like Christ, I become free. I'm freer today than I was yesterday. I'm freer next week than I was this week. And we just continue to move on towards freedom and ultimately the freedom. I hope you and I value freedom more than anything. It is the one aspect that God gives every human being. This is why he doesn't tamper with our lives. He allows everything to play itself out. Because of why? Freedom. He values that above everything, because if you don't have it, you're nothing but a slave. You're nothing but a robot. And he didn't create robots. He wants us to have freedom, but you have to go out and get it. You have to want it. You have to want to be responsible. I like this clip from Braveheart. It's one of my favorite movies, talking about freedom. Let me play it for you. I love it.
Sons of Scotland, I am William Wallace.
William Wallace is 7 feet tall.
Yes, I've heard. Kills men by the hundred. And if he were here, he'd consume the English with fireballs from his eyes and bolts of lightning from his... I am William Wallace. And I see a whole army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do with that freedom? Will you fight?
Against that? No! We will run!
And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, Would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Don't let anyone take your freedom. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for the freedom that you have given us through your Son, the ultimate freedom from sin and death, but freedom for becoming like you, freedom to obey you, freedom to become a slave to you, freedom to live according to your moral standards. Thank you for that. Help us to do our job, to be diligent, to be obedient to you, and to be able to pass this concept on to the younger generation. And I pray, Father, if there's someone in this room that hasn't got their freedom from Christ by being saved, today would be the day of their salvation. They would believe on Christ, that he died for them on a cross, was buried and rose on the third day to give them everlasting life and ultimate freedom through him. Speak to their hearts now and bless us as we go and help us to guard the freedom you have given us. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Hey everybody, I need your help, and I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm, and so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel. And we film in Turkey and different places like that. And so it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us and our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.